Hello everyone, David here from Culture of Gaming, occasional host and a creator of the Retro Rumble podcast. This is just a quick heads up. For the last 7 minutes of this episode, there's a terrible echo that just comes out of nowhere. We're not sure what caused it, but we'll do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again. So once again, sorry about that, and let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Retro Rumble podcast number 4. I am your host and moderator, Mike Negrelli, and here we have today, fighting on the side of Chaos, David White.
Hello.
How you doing?
I am good.
And fighting on the other side, we have Aidan Simons. How
Isn't
you
it like...
doing?
Is good? Isn't it like Kronos or no? What's her name?
I actually don't even remember. That's why I said the other side.
Hold on.
You talk about Chrono Trigger?
No, like it's like Chaos is like a character in Final Fantasy, and like it was in the Dissidia games. Like it was.
Yeah, he's the main. He's the final boss fight of the original.
Hold on, I'm looking it up because now it's bothering me. Cosmos.
Oh, okay.
Cosmos and Chaos. Okay.
Yes, Cosmos.
Okay, so you were fighting on the side of Cosmos.
Yeah.
What was the boss that you were literally fighting Chaos? Like
well,
the
before
actual...
we get into that, how are you doing?
Yeah,
today,
go on.
David?
I'm
good. Oh, sorry, go on.
I thought he was talking to me. I'm sorry. I'm good. I'm like, this is my second podcast in 2 days, so this is fun.
Ooh, look at you.
I know. I'm just gonna be a star.
Oh wow, you're gonna be a regular on the show.
And we'll see.
So what have you guys been playing lately?
Well, I've been playing. I've been doing my usual stint of becoming momentarily obsessed with Minecraft. It's a game where I'll play it non-stop and obsessively for like 6 months or something like that, or a couple of weeks, and then I'll forget about it for a long time.
David,
What?
if you don't mind me saying, it seems like you get involved every single week. You get involved with a different epic video game series. I mean, first week you had like, I'm totally into columns, and I'm gonna beat the high score. And
yeah,
I'm
I
getting
accidentally-
better and better. And then last week you were like, I've decided to get back into Pokemon. And this week you're into Minecraft. And so like,
Yeah, I'm kind of a wanderer like that. You know, I just pick up a game and then I become briefly obsessed with it before I move on to another one. Or I completely destroy it. By the way, going back to what you said about columns, I took my eye off the ball. I blamed my phone. I was sat there doing my thing, just sort of plowing, just getting those points. And so, just for the listeners who don't know, I was trying to max out columns. I was going for 99,999,999 points on easy, which is fine, which is not too much of a challenge. You just got to stay focused, not take too many risks. If you do that, it's just more of a time thing. So I had my Mega Drive on for like 3 or 4 days, and then one time I just sat down, turned it on, started playing, and I just glanced at my phone, and the screen just filled up. And I think I stopped at something like 64, 65 million or something like that. I mean, I've never felt like so much time was wasted in all my life. I was just like,
heartbreaking.
Not only was that completely stupid what I was doing, I didn't even complete it. So it was like the most wastingest of time wasted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've all been there.
I'll do it again.
We've all been there.
I feel like I have to do it now.
Okay, we'll keep you to that. Aidan, what have you been playing lately?
Still on that Octopath Traveler grind. I think I'm just at the point where I'm obsessed with it. I'm actually also just starting We Happy Few, which I am reviewing for this website, which is exciting. It's a game that's already been out, so it's been kind of like mixed reviews. So I'm interested to see how I feel about it.
Well, we can't wait to hear about that. Do you think that you'll write a review after that?
Yeah, I said I'm reviewing, Mike. I'm reviewing it, Mike.
Are you sure? Okay, I'm just making sure, man. I'm sorry, my fiance just walked into the room and completely distracted me.
Okay, it's okay.
She was like making faces at me and just like.
It's okay.
It's
I'll
okay.
forgive this.
Okay. Oh man, that's embarrassing. So who do you think is your favorite character and story and everything like that in Octopath?
I think like mechanically my favorite character is Cyrus because I mean he's like, if you don't know, he's like the scholar, aka the Black Mage, so he like is the most powerful magic user and can use fire, ice, and lightning attacks. But story wise, that's a little different because their stories are, I think right now my favorite storyline might be I think Primrose the Dancer. It's like, I'm without going into too spoilers, it's like a revenge story. And it kind of is like the most mature story of all of them because like the stories range from like revenge from Primrose, but like one of the characters is just like I want to be a merchant.
Like it's so funny that you say that because it seems like every single like source that I listen to that talks about Octopath, they all love Primrose. They all think that she's like the best because of like her story.
Yeah, like as a character, I don't like. She's not my favorite because I'm not someone, because she's a dancer. Like obviously, so her thing is like buffing and debuffing characters, which isn't really something I do a lot in RPGs. I'm kind of more or less like an all offensive character, like just get in and attack the enemy. But I like her. I like all the stories. There's not really a dud in the storylines because like it's a very well written game. It's just like they all kind of have different stakes to them, which is just kind of fun. It's just like this one guy, Alphen, just wants to be an apothecary, and then Ulbrich is over here like saying, "I want to get revenge for my king who was murdered."
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So it sounds like not just an epic RPG, but like a bunch of little tiny epic RPGs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily even call it epic because I mean I'm still not at the end of the story, so like probably like as RPGs do, they probably just do a complete 180 at the final hour. But it really is just kind of like these characters' stories, like it's just their personal stories. Like there's no like bit, like I think I mentioned this last week's episode. There's no like big overwhelming evil. Like there's hints at like greater storyline, but right now it's just these characters' personal stories.
Because a lot of RPGs, it seems like you are fighting against another group of people or another person, and then at the last hour, right before the last boss, it's like, oh, by the way, this evil force of the universe is causing all this stuff to go down. So the person you've been fighting against this entire time is not your final boss. This, ghost or force of evil is your final boss, which kind of annoys me a little bit.
Like from what I hear, like there is kind of like a post game secret that kind of not really ties everything together, but kind of gives like ties the lore together of the overall world. But like right now it's like, but like I don't know, because I don't know how much you know about, but like these characters, like their stories are completely separate. Like they never interact or anything except in certain like optional scenes, which is actually a little disappointing because part of me of what I like about RPGs, and like we'll talk about it in the Final Fantasy thing, but like about how these characters develop, not both individually but also together, and like as their relationships develop.
Well, it's really funny that you bring that up, because later on when we talk about Final Fantasy, one of my favorites is Final Fantasy IX, and I feel like that kind of suffers from the same thing where like the final boss has like nothing to do with the rest of it, and but because I love it so much, like I have a great reason for why that's awesome, but we'll get to that later. I guess we're still in the intros, and I guess I will talk about what I'm up to now, I guess. As far as what I'm up to, I'm still, playing Yakuza 0. I'm always playing Yakuza 0 because that game is so big. I'm at a point now where I am running a cabaret club, and so it is really interesting because it's all about picking the right girl to talk to the right customer.
Okay.
And it sounds kind of pervy, and like it's Japan, so there's always going to be like a little bit of perv.
Yeah.
But like there will be somebody who say, I want to find somebody to talk to who's really good at talking to me, and I prefer somebody who's cute. And so you have to pick somebody who has a really good stat in cuteness and somebody who's really good at talking.
It's a matter of opinion.
Exactly, but in the case of the game, it's all like a matter of stats. And I want somebody who's funny. I want somebody who will pamper me, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really funny too, because like one of the hostesses that I unlocked was a this old lady, this like 65-year-old lady, and like I basically gave her a job because she wouldn't leave me alone unless I did. And the funny part about that is that she's really good at talking, and she's really funny. And so if you have a customer who's like, I want to talk to somebody for a long time who's really funny, you pick her, and like the customers love her, and it's so funny.
That was a series I really wanted to get into. I'm sorry for interrupting there, but I would love you to recommend like where to start. For me, because I've always wanted to jump into that series.
I would definitely recommend getting into Yakuza and starting at Yakuza 0, because it has all the mechanics of the later in the series, but it starts before the events of the first.
Have you played the other Yakuza games?
I have not. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to move on to Yakuza Kiwami, which is a remake of the first one.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, because I've seen like gameplay footage of the original, and it does not hold up, which is why they had to like remake it. But I can't wait to play the Kiwami and then Kiwami 2, because they remade the second one as well.
Yeah, because I haven't played it, but I was also like, you could make the argument that you may be better off playing the first one first, because even though it is a prequel, prequels tend to be made with so you do gain a little something else. You do gain a little something by playing the other games that take place after it.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying that if you need a place to start, perhaps 0 wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah. Oh no, I definitely.
Like you don't want to start on 3. You don't want to start on 3.
Well, I also heard I think they made 6 in mind as a jumping on point too. So you could also do that if you don't want to play through 5, 6 other games.
Really? That sounds bizarre, simply because it's the end of the main character Kiryu. It's the end of his saga. So
I mean it's kind of like Kingdom Hearts 3. It's gonna be on Xbox One, and it literally no other game is on an Xbox system, and that is gonna be this final end of the series. So I would hope they would find. I think they've talked about how they're gonna get people who've never played them before, but because when you do introduce a game on a new generation, especially a system like the PS4 that is so massively successful, there is going to be new people who haven't necessarily played the games prior.
Absolutely. Speaking of Kingdom Hearts, does anybody remember when Kingdom Hearts actually had Final Fantasy in it?
It still does in a little bit.
Not really. It's kind of spun off into its own thing where there's no Final Fantasy characters anymore. It's all about Disney.
Yeah. Well,
it seems like it anyway.
Yeah, obviously we haven't seen any in Kingdom Hearts 3, but I would assume they're there because characters like Leon and Aerith have been so important to the other previous games, and I'm gonna go on. This guy's not gonna take me too long. But they had Zack Fair in Birth by Sleep because that was a prequel, so it kind of fits. But they haven't really fit in the story necessarily, because in Dream Drop Distance they go in this whole dream world. But I definitely don't think they're gonna, and that's kind of cool that they had the World Ends With You characters in place of them, but I don't think there's gonna be Final Fantasy characters in this. It wouldn't be a Kingdom Hearts game without them.
Well, quite honestly, if they wanted to get me to buy it day one, then Kingdom Hearts 3 would have a Final Fantasy world. I don't care if it's a Final Fantasy 7 world. I don't care if it's a Final Fantasy 4 world.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Just give me a Final Fantasy world, not just a Disney world.
I think they talked about it. I could be completely wrong, but it's definitely if they haven't talked about it, it's still my opinion. But like, it's not something because if you like look at it, the original worlds are where these Kingdom Hearts or where these Final Fantasy characters are from. Like whether it be like Destiny Islands or Twilight Town or Radiant Garden, like the original for Kingdom Hearts world, those are where these Final Fantasy characters are from.
Yeah, and wasn't like the concept. It's been a while since I've played Kingdom Hearts, but wasn't the concept of Twilight Town? Wasn't the concept of that it was a place where all these people who have been dislocated from their homes initially went to?
That's Traverse Town. That's
Traverse Town.
Twilight Town is where Roxas is from. That's where you start off in Kingdom Hearts 2, and you see like you see Setzer and Cypher, like those characters, and Vivi.
I just kind of wish that like when you go to Traverse Town that Sid from Final Fantasy VII is only there because he was displaced from his own world. I wish we could go back to Final Fantasy VII world and be like, oh, by the way, we fought the darkness and we've unlocked, Final Fantasy VII world.
I don't want to. It would be such an interesting contrast as well. To have like something like Midgar in amongst all these like colorful Disney universes. It would be a lovely, awesomely contrasting stage. It would be cool.
I will say, I'm probably being real Kingdom Hearts nerd here. I think Sid too, but those characters like Leon, Yuffie, and Aerith, they are confirmed to be from Radiant Garden / Hollow Bastion. So I would assume that's where Sid is from too, because they all fled together.
Oh, okay.
Because my point, that's all these original made for Kingdom Hearts world, like the Destiny Islands and stuff. Those are where these Final Fantasy characters inhabit.
Oh, that bites. But
that's what they've said. That's how it's been.
Yeah.
Sorry to burst your bubble.
I know. It's been my dream since Kingdom Hearts came out that they'd have a Final Fantasy or a Final Fantasy world.
Do you think
they've talked about it, but sorry.
No, go on. I was going to come on to that. Do you think the reason why they've decided not to do it is because of the remake?
Well, I mean, the Kingdom Hearts 1 came out 10 years ago. This was before.
I mean, a Final Fantasy world in Kingdom Hearts 3. I assume that's what you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, for Final Fantasy.
But they've decided not to do it because
for Kingdom Hearts 3. Yeah.
Because of the remake. They want to keep them.
I don't know if it's that. I just think that's just always how the series has just always been about Disney worlds. It's been about Disney worlds and Final Fantasy characters. Because you see the Final Fantasy characters in other Disney worlds too occasionally. So it's never it. I can't remember where, but I think Nomura has talked about it. But I think he said something he did say at some point guys, there's most likely never gonna be a specific Final Fantasy world. Just because that's just not what the series is about.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so.
But on that note, we should probably start talking about Final Fantasy. And, yeah. All right. Last week, if you joined us, we were talking about Final Fantasy 1 through 6.
Ooh.
Yes, we were talking about Final Fantasy 1 through 6. And
the Nintendo era.
The Nintendo era. But this week, I think we're going to focus a little bit more about Final Fantasy 7 through present.
Yep.
And honestly, if anybody wants to talk about the 1 through 6 again, and bring it up in conversation, don't feel like we're censoring you. But,
okay.
It's hard not to. Did you not hear the music I just played?
No, I heard it.
I did. We did. That's why I appreciate it.
It lagged out on me. The timing was awful, but there we go. Hey, we have sounds.
Just don't want to get that copyright.
Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? We have a soundboard now. That's awesome.
I'll edit it in later.
So, I know I asked this last week, but what is everyone's experience with the PlayStation era of Final Fantasy? What was your first?
I'll go first, Aidan, because mine's kind of limited. I imagine yours is probably more extensive than mine. So so my introduction was to like for most people Final Fantasy VII first amongst all, and I just saw a friend playing it who was very good at it. I knew of it a little bit. I knew that it was well known. It was well thought of, but I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what an RPG was even back then. And then just on my boredom, my wanders later in life, I came across a copy and I thought, I'm just going to give it a go. That's my extent of Final Fantasy VII. Really, I just sort of bought it on a whim. Didn't really know much about it all that much, and sat down and played it more or less non-stop. Pretty much sunk like a good number of hours in it, because the thing about RPGs and why they appeal to me so much is because I love to talk to every NPC, search every building, find every secret and stuff like that. Any RPG I can easily sink 100 hours into it if I wanted to. And that was it for a while. I didn't play any other Final Fantasy. I enjoyed it. For some reason I didn't go out and look for Final 8 or 9 or anything like that. And then a good few years later, got my hands on Final Fantasy 4 and 5 for the GBA, because I just fresh played Golden Sun. So I wanted another RPG, and I saw that. I didn't even know it was on a GBA, so I thought, that's awesome, I'll get back on that. And Final Fantasy 4 became my favorite then, because I became very obsessed with it, played it non-stop. Again, another game which I just searched every corner, looked for every secret and all that stuff. 5 felt like just another chapter of 4 to me, really, because gameplay-wise it was similar. You have the job system, which was a nice addition. So it was a nice follow-up to 4. And I didn't play 8 until about, I want to say, probably about 5-6 years ago, I think.
And you loved it.
I liked 8. I can see why people didn't like it, but I liked it.
It's probably my least or second least favorite.
The reason why I thought you loved it, because anytime I bring it up in a negative context at Culture of Gaming, you seem to be the first one to defend it.
Am I? Okay.
It seems like it.
Probably, only because I think I just think it is a good game. It's not the best that I've played, but I really think people are way too harsh on it. And I also think the Final Fantasy series in general, if it's the worst in the series, if you ranked everyone, if you went ahead and ranked every game yourself, even the one ranked at the bottom is still a good game.
Yeah.
So I think people hate on Final Fantasy VIII like it's actually garbage, but it's not. It's a genuinely good game. It's just, like I said last time, it's just really divisive. It is either some people really love it, some people really hate it. I think the reason why people don't like Final Fantasy VIII is because it's an incredibly slow burn. You spend about, well, if you meet, you spend about 10, 15 hours in the garden, but it takes a while before you get out into the world, before you become a seed. It's just a slow burn, and also the unlimited summons as well. I think that kind of.
I mean, what did you move on from after Final Fantasy VIII? What did you move on with?
Well, I did then get my hands on Final 6 and Final 9. I did borrow them from a friend. I spent too much time. And then before I knew it, I had to give them back. So that as far as Final Fantasy goes, that is the extent of my experience.
Aidan, what is your experience with the PlayStation era of Final Fantasy?
So my first PlayStation Final Fantasy, and first Final Fantasy in general, besides 1 on the PSP, which kind of came and went for me. I played Final Fantasy X, the remaster, on PS3. It was came in 10, 10-2, and I absolutely fell in love with 10, and I just kind of went on I think that was also the year I played Ni no Kuni, and so that was just a big RPG year for me, so I kind of dived right into RPGs, and so I went and bought on the PlayStation Store Final Fantasy 9. I absolutely love 9, played Final Fantasy 7, which I really like. 8, I'm not a fan of, and so I kind of just I kind of just wanted to play all the other games in the series.
As for me, my experience with Final Fantasy, the PlayStation era anyway, is like I mentioned last week. I played the Super Nintendo ones illegitimately through ROMs, but every single other one, I bought the PSP 1, 2. 3, you know. But as far as the PlayStation era, my first PlayStation era one was Final Fantasy X. And that was before I heard about Dissidia even coming out, I think. After that, I went from 4, 5, and 6 to 10. And in the back of my mind, I always knew that Final Fantasy 7 and 9 were known as the best ones. And when I'm told something like that, I always keep it in my mind to save it for last. So that's exactly what I did. At first, when I heard that the PSN store was going to release Final Fantasy VII on PS3 and PSP, I got it on the PSP. And I loved having Final Fantasy VII as a portable game. It was amazing. I could just put it in sleep mode anytime I wanted. And it was a lot of fun. I heard that Final Fantasy VIII was horrible, so I skipped that one to 9. And then I went to 9. And 9 was amazing. After the credits rolled on that one, that story, that world, everything was just stuck in my mind. I loved it so much.
It's great.
And I played Final Fantasy Tactics, which I don't know if you guys want to talk about that this week. But I'm not really much into the tactical RPGs, so that kind of came and went for me. Then I said, "Oh, what the hell?" And I decided to play Final Fantasy VIII. Surprisingly, the game. Oh gosh, this was all like 8 years ago or 10 years ago.
I thought you said you dove in recently. I have not played it, but no, you've already said you've already played it, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to get them all out of the way. That's a horrible way to say that. I wanted to know all of the Final Fantasies so that I could be prepared, quote unquote, for Dissidia. Which, by the way, I don't know if we're going to get into all the spin-offs, but Dissidia is actually a solid series. I haven't played the third one on PS4, but the first two on the PSP were amazing with the RPG elements and everything like that. You could choose which moves your character could do. I'm rambling, so let me just say one more sentence. It was only recently that I played 15. I was really disappointed with 15.
Oh, really?
I felt like the characters in the story, the side characters in the story, just reminded me of Sonic 06. You know, like those people, their mouths don't move, and their hands never stop moving.
I mean, I definitely think we're gonna talk about that game, but yeah.
Oh yeah, but oh man, and then the side stories in that game just like kind of are all the same. It's either like, oh, I have a truck full of supplies that got ransacked by monsters. Can you go get the supplies? So you go to where the supplies are, and then you fight monsters. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're all pretty much like that. That's all the side quests, pretty much. I went off on a tangent.
No, that's cool, man.
So I guess we should talk about these by game. Where better to start off than Final Fantasy VII, arguably the one that made this whole series huge in the West.
I wouldn't say arguably. It is.
Definitely, yeah.
It's like, and it is the game that introduced RPGs in general to a lot of people in the West. Like, that game was like, I mean, I was like, it came out in 97, right?
Well, I would even say up until that point, 97, yeah. Go on,
yeah,
sorry.
like I was like 1 when that game came out, so
Oh my god!
But like,
oh, you're making me feel old, man.
Oh, you're making me feel old. How old are you then, Mike?
I am exactly 30 years old.
Oh, right. Well, I was 14 back then, so I'm the oldest of us bunch.
Yeah, I'm 22, a child. But so like, but from what like, I mean, for everything I hear, like that game was like, it kind of was like the first, like I heard like that game got television advertisements and everything. Like it was like one of the first like big high profile mainstream like RPGs, and like kind of like it kind of set the tone for RPGs from that point.
It was
on.
Advertised like a movie.
Well, I think for many it probably was their first like movie-like experience with the game because it was fairly new to the PlayStation. The PlayStation was in the US. The PlayStation was no more than a year or so old.
Yeah.
At the time, so it was still a lot of sports games, a lot of platformers, and still, a lot of developers were trying to figure out what they could do with this new easy to program for really cool platform, and so they're still doing things like 2D and 2.5D platformers and stuff like that. So I think up until that point, no one really experienced something like that on such a scope. A genuine
absolutely.
Oh yeah,
and I hope it goes without saying spoilers for all the games ahead.
I mean, we
try not to spoil things, but I mean,
we could talk about that one moment. We're gonna talk about that.
The one moment that everybody knows.
Yeah,
played it,
let's be honest. If you're listening to this podcast and you've never played a Final Fantasy game, or you don't know all of the big story beats in the entire series, then why are you listening?
Well, maybe they're trying to get into the series. No, but
perhaps.
Yeah,
possibly.
But if as long as we're on the subject, quite honestly, like I knew that death was coming. I knew that it was going to happen because. It's such a 10-year-old spoiler at that point that I had played it that I knew that it was going to happen. And
I'm just trying to think of when
it still got to me. It still got to me, and that is a compliment to the story. And like I knew it was coming, and I still was emotionally affected by it.
I think what was so striking about it is that it seemed so senseless, almost like as if Sephiroth. We are talking about that, right? Almost as if.
No, we're talking about the inclusion of Kate Sith.
He's a character.
Actually, I think it's pronounced. If you want the true pronunciation of that word,
Katsi or something.
Ketchi or something like that.
Yeah.
Not the first one either. It was a character called Katsith or whatever in 4, I think.
Yeah, I didn't mean to change the subject.
Stuff.
Yeah,
we should it's when Aerith just gets impaled.
Yeah, I remember thinking. I can't remember if I knew it was coming or something like that. I really can't recall. I may have known that she was going to die, but it's like Mike, it did catch me off guard, only because I think there were several times where I thought maybe this could be it or something like that, or this is the boss battle where Aerith dies or something like that. But because it seemed so mindless and almost as if Sephiroth wanted to upset them, because he hid up in the rafters somewhere or whatever, waited for them to approach, and then dove down in the most dramatic fashion possible and stabbed her through the back, right through the chest. I mean, it's brutal, considering.
He made it as dramatic as he could.
Yeah, he wanted to shock
them. The thing is,
for all that.
I think what really got me about that was the fact that the thing that really got me about that scene was that he promised to protect her. I didn't have the context, but before I played the game, I didn't have the context of their relationship. But by the point that you get to that part in the story, you get the context of their relationship. Cloud starts out as basically her bodyguard, and they go on the date, if you get the right potentially you go on a date with her at the Golden Saucer.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that he promised that nothing would happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
That is what made it so powerful for me. And then he's holding her dead body in his arms, says she'll never laugh, she'll never get mad ever again. She'll never, have
also, what I particularly like about that sequence is just because it really makes Sephiroth look incredibly evil, is just when Cloud runs to Aerith, whatever, and cradles her. Sephiroth has got his arms up in the air, as if he's savoring the moment, as if he's just wallowing in their hatred. Not wallowing, he's bathing in it. He loves it.
It's when he became a true sociopath.
Yeah, he genuinely was crazy.
And the thing is, I knew about it too. Obviously, who does? If you know about video games, you know about this moment. What struck me is she's like the only genuinely good person in that game. It's a game full of like, I'm sorry, I'm going to. It's a game full of like kind of like more morally gray characters or like some straight up bad, and like you got characters like Cloud and Tifa and oh god, what's his name?
Barrett.
And like, because I was gonna say like Bennett, I was like, that's not it. They're like
Bennett.
They are heroes, but they're also like they are terrorists. Yuffie is the worst.
Oh,
she is like a double agent. Vincent is just a vampire. Like she's the only good-natured character. Like she's like this innocent, kind of like naive child in a way, and so she's like the most innocent of the characters, and she just gets not brutally murdered, but just murdered.
I call it brutal.
It's brutal. It just didn't have any blood to it because of graphics and
the only reason I don't call it
the
brutal
rating.
Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't call it brutal is just because it's just one quick stab and like that's it. Like,
very clean, very surgical.
That's like why I'm like saying like maybe not brutal, but and like so she's the one who like gets killed, and also like from a gameplay mechanic, like you lose. Like each character can take on any role, but like she is essentially the white mage of the group, and that's just she's just gone. Like she's like the most powerful magic user in that game, and you just don't have access to any of those abilities anymore.
Yeah.
And of course, based on following that, there was a lot of course, whispers on the internet and rumors that you could bring her back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course, because it's human nature, and that's what people want to do when you lose somebody close to you. First thing you want to do is think, oh, they're not actually dead.
And
do you think it's because it was such a shocking death that people...
Speaking of which... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because it was such a shocking death, I think people were expecting that a little bit. Because she was, like you guys are saying, she was such a good-natured, innocent character. It would seem almost senseless that she would die. So
it's like
at
killing
some
a puppy.
Point, she's going to she's the last of an ancient race. She's going to come back. It's going to be something magical. She's going to come back at the end and save everyone, Deus Machina and all that.
She kind of did in the end, though.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, but no more else could have.
Yeah, but I mean, she like in the end she did cast a spell. Like right before she like it was obviously it didn't like quite. It wasn't quite like the saving grace, but like she did in the end. She did kind of save everyone. But I mean, and like, it wasn't never anything that's really happened in a video game before. Like, there's been death in video games, but never of a main character.
Well,
such like. Kind of.
I want to disagree with you. I mean, but like, okay, I want to say what I want to say before first. I want to just say that her death scene was inspired by the death of the creator Hironobu Sakaguchi's mother, and it was inspired. It was inspired by the feeling of death not being glamorous. Because in movies, video games, death is always like, I'm going to stay behind. I'm going to save everybody. You know.
That was going to be my point too. Like in other games, like. Oh, sorry.
He wanted to show that death isn't always glamorous. And
they were deaths up until that point that were just that, like we were talking about in the last episode with Yang and Sid in Final Fantasy IV, both jumping to
Shadow.
And
see, that's why I wanted to correct Aidan. Is because before we had Aerith, we had Goluf in 5. We had Tella in 4. We had
True.
Well, basically, just like I guess she wasn't old though.
Teller didn't sacrifice himself, did he? Teller was just kind of like took on more than he could chew.
Goluf in 5, not to go back to 5, like we were talking about last week, but in 5, Goluf had like a vendetta against X-Death, and so he went to go face him by himself.
Yeah, that's like that's what I meant. Like, yes, I've had death in games before, but not in this way, not in like a way where they were just like taken from the character. Like in like the other cases, it was like them sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Like this, her death didn't serve any greater purpose. It was just
a straight up murder.
Her. Yeah, he just murdered her essentially because he wanted to and because he could. And like that's what makes it different. Yeah, he wanted to make Cloud suffer.
What would you guys say is your favorite part about 7?
That. Probably. Yeah, I'm gonna get.
I think honestly, like, I kind of like the tone of it because, like, obviously we do remember these serious moments and like but it really is a campy game. Like that's very like over the top and ridiculous, especially in those opening moments, like when you're in Midgar and like things like the Honeybee Club, which I mean that may be its own thing, but it really, and like the fact that you're like fighting like giant houses, it like for all like how like people think of it, some people may think of it as this like darker game in the series, and like how Cloud is this like dark and brooding hero. It really isn't that in a way. Like it really is
sort of a steampunky kind of game, really. I wouldn't call it dark.
It has
like a lighthearted to it.
Yeah, I can't stand how everybody thinks of Cloud as this emo dope.
He's the biggest dork ever.
But the thing is, like at the beginning of 7, he was this cocky dude who was like deluding himself.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about the Final Fantasy series, is that it's all about these people who have to either confront something major in their lives that they're just like trying to ignore. And like, I mean, later on we'll talk about 9 and VV and like and I love that game to death for these exact reasons, because the whole series of Final Fantasy is just all about it. It's all about people confronting what they don't want to confront.
Yeah, and maybe we've been talking about this game for a while, but and like it kind of like, I mean, the materia system is great. Like it's kind of like
things that don't hold up. What are things that don't hold up?
Visuals. I mean, they don't bother me too much. I hear a lot of people hate on that quite a bit. They say, you know, look at Cloud's arms. What's up with those 4 arms? You know, their boxes, and stuff like that. But because of where because of the era I like to focus on when I'm buying games and playing games, I can see past that a little bit because I'm not used to PS4 level detail, you know. So I can kind of, I guess I can kind of see past it, but it doesn't bother me. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it holds up either.
I think it holds up because like it is like when turn-based RPGs, like they're all like they're not all the same, but like they kind of just like there's really no like aging out. But I honestly think like, and this is what applies to multiple Final Fantasy games, like most of the ones we'll talk about. I think the active time battle system hasn't really aged that well because it just becomes a lot of the time you're just standing and waiting for your meter to fill up so you can take your turn. It's just like it's a lot. Like in a normal turn-based system, you can just like select your attacks, but here it's a lot of just sitting and waiting to make your move. And it kind of makes things. But
that shouldn't turn you off from trying Final Fantasy if you haven't tried it.
No.
Because all the newest releases, all the newest re-releases on the PS4. 7 and 9, they all added a feature where you can fast forward.
Oh my god! And like
you can make the battles quick. You can make it so that your character has 99
take out the
level 99
summon animations.
I'm not sure about how I feel about that. I don't know. I feel like it's taking part of the game away.
It takes away the grind. I mean, like
that's what I'm talking about. It's kind of.
But for a lot of people, that is the biggest obstacle for doing RPGs is the grind. A lot of people don't have the time to just sit and grind for hours.
In that case, then RPGs aren't for them.
I wouldn't necessarily say that because RPGs are more about the story than the grind, I would argue.
I like the grind. I love maxing out my characters and stuff like that. I think I think that's not for everybody. I will agree, but I just think if grinding or leveling, wanting to just generally leveling up your characters puts you off a game. And RPGs just aren't for you, surely.
I don't think it's that. It's just like the fact that like why am I echoing again? It's like the hours long.
But maybe we should move on to the next game.
Go for it.
Final Fantasy VIII. What are the parts that hold up? What are the parts that don't hold up?
I think the story's pretty. I like the story of it. It's an
I like the story.
interesting story.
I like the story.
Oh, that's so
Um,
funny that you say that, because for me, the story is exactly what doesn't hold up in 8 for me, because the characters don't even feel like people to me. They make the dumbest decisions alive. Like, I don't understand.
Squall is one of my least favorite characters. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me just give you an example, and this isn't really a spoiler because
It's like Moody Cloud turned up to 11.
It's out of context. It really means nothing. But there's a point in the game where you're looking for the principal of the school, and nobody can find him. Now, where's the first place you might look for the principal of a school?
Faculty.
Exactly.
President's,
principal's office.
Principal's office, yeah.
And nobody thought to look in the principal's office. Are you kidding me?
Okay, that's just like
That's just an example of like the dumb things that the characters do.
but that's also
I-
video game logic.
Yeah.
But
Like-
I must admit that the game does hold up for me as far as like gameplay. The
Battle
junction
system,
system
definitely. Yeah.
the junction system is not horrible. It's really not. And quite honestly, like when the last time I talked bad about it, somebody talked right back at me about the story, and he's like, how much it meant to him, and he's like, look, Squall was never meant to be a leader. He was thrusted into this position that he didn't want. His own teacher made him the leader of the party, and she's supposed to be responsible for him. So this is all about a guy who is taking on something that he's not ready to take on.
Which is Final Fantasy, like you said, Final Fantasy in a nutshell.
Yeah. And if you I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you want to experience the best versions of that type of story arc, 8's not the place I would recommend to go first, but it's still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a game I would recommend to start out, no.
It's not like I really am not a fan of the junction system.
I was initially put off by that, but I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to RPGs. I'll keep plowing through until the end. And then I grew to love it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. At first, I was put off by the junction system, but then by the end, you have access to the Ultima spell, and like all these spells that you put onto your person, onto your characters. Like, you can put, like, a spell onto your defense, and all of a sudden, like, you put a fire spell onto your defense, and all of a sudden, you're immune to fire.
Mm.
That kind of thing. By the end of the game, you feel so powerful because you have access to the Ultima spell, and it basically makes you immune to everything. And so, like, I really appreciated how the junction system had, like, a progression. But I admit, at the beginning of the game, it feels horrible because like you have like no options in as far as like making your character stronger.
There's a point where perhaps fast forwarding would help in Final Fantasy VIII in particular, because I think one of the primary reasons people don't like Final 8 is because of the summons, and there is no real reason to not use them early on in the game, or really in most parts of the games you can just spam it and spam it and spam it. But of course, it's only so many times that Quetzalcoatl can look awesome before he starts getting a bit tedious, and you're casting him for the 15th time that you think, I might as well just cast Ifrit just to mix things up a little bit.
And honestly, that's why like I don't know if Final Fantasy VIII did it, but the re-release of Final Fantasy VII on PS4 took out summon animations like after the first time using them, which like
Final Fantasy VIII hasn't even been re-released yet, and so people are really upset about that.
They'll release so many others re-release so many others before they get to 8. There'll be 9, there'll be 6, there'll be 5, there'll be 4 before they look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a whole issue like on its own about like these emulate these old games on PlayStation 4, because PS3 had like every Final Fantasy game pretty much that was released on PlayStation 1, and like PlayStation Classic releases on PS4 haven't been necessarily as great. But that again, that's a different conversation.
Final Fantasy VIII had some of the best summons. They may have taken
yeah.
forever. They may have taken forever, but I love the Doom Train, for example.
Final 8 has my favorite summon,
Which one?
and that would be Ifrit. Or at least my favorite, certainly my favorite iteration of Ifrit.
He's
he
like a
genuinely
beast.
he's incredibly badass. But I just think it's the way it's executed, the way it's animated. I mean, come on, he emerges from a fiery hole, lands on the earth as if to say, I'm ready to f stuff up, and then he does this, what can only be a cool Dracula pose. You know, he crosses his arms across his chest and then just flies up into the air, just going, I'm just going to go up here for a sec, followed by a rock that he just summons with him. Goes up into the air, reaches back as far as he can possibly go, and then double fist smacks a giant boulder in your face. I mean, it's badass. You know?
Final Fantasy games are, if Final Fantasy games are known for anything, it is subtlety.
Yeah.
I always think of like the supernova, or any attack, like the supernova attack at the end of Final Fantasy VII, when it destroys planets, but when it gets to the party, everyone just goes, oh. everyone just gets knocked a bit, you know, gets a bit bumped around a bit.
That's
kind of dumb, but I know, that's one of the things I love about it. It even though it doesn't quite make sense, it knows how to do badass awesomeness when it comes to summons. You know, every some are completely goofy. I think one of the worst ones is Siren from Final Fantasy VIII. I'm going to hit you with some gold wind. Take that.
Okay. I guess we've been talking about that for a while. How about moving on? We have Final Fantasy IX. What are the parts that hold up? What are the parts that don't hold up?
I think it holds up pretty well. Like it's one of my favorite Final Fantasy games ever. It's definitely in my top 3. A Return, it's actually like the first fantasy setting for that game in like years. Like I think because 6 didn't really have much of had more of a steampunk setting too. So it was really kind of it was like kind of a return to the fantasy that like was to define the early ages of
I
Final
kind
Fantasy.
of think that 9
was kind of a
the
counter to
same
8,
type of way as 6.
Wasn't 9 kind of a count at 8, where like
instead of a high school.
They announced, I'm pretty sure they announced 9, 10, and 11 all at the same time, or maybe they not, but they were in development at the same time. And like, so like while 10 was like kind of this whole next era of Final Fantasy, 9 was kind of like a return to what Final Fantasy used to be. It was like a look at classic Final Fantasy through the lens of Final Fantasy VIII.
It was a love letter to fans of the entire series because it had references up the wazoo of every single one. They had the four fiends from 1. You meet up with Ramu and he tells you a story that's basically just recounting what happened from 2. You have all these.
Don't you find Cloud's sword in a shop as well?
I think you might.
I think you go into a shop and they say like some spiky-haired guy came in or bought one like that, or something like that. It was some reference to Cloud.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But I really do think that I think that the system, the fighting system in 9 really holds up extremely well. I like it even more than the materia system.
I do too.
Because I feel like the materia system suffers from with the materia system, every character can feel the same if they want to.
Yeah.
And but with Final Fantasy IX, everybody's relegated to their different classes, and you can basically use your I forget what they're called, but you can use each one of your AP points and put them wherever you want. Like if you want like an extra boost against beasts, you can do that.
And they were like tied to the equipment you put on too, which is really cool.
Yeah, but once you wore that equipment for long enough,
you can max it out, and
you didn't have to wear it anymore, and you would still have the buffs from it.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm speaking as Final Fantasy IX is my favorite Final Fantasy. I think the thing that really holds up for me as far as that is the story.
Yeah, I was
And-
gonna mention that.
And what makes it different than, like, say, Final Fantasy VII or every single character in your party is dealing with the inevitability of death in some way.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest criticisms of Final Fantasy IX is that the final boss makes no sense.
It doesn't.
And I would disagree, not
Okay.
only on a metaphorical level, but on a
Story.
on a story level as well. On the metaphorical level, the boss represents the inevitability of death. And so the fact that, like, the characters spend this entire game, like, Vivi finds out that he is for all intents and purposes, a doll who
Or
has a
I was
very
gonna say
short
drone.
lifespan. Who knows how long he's going to last? He might die at any moment, because these dolls only last. I think the minor dolls only last like a year or so, and Vivi is 8 years old.
Hmm.
And so he doesn't know when he's gonna die. And so, like, they find this village full of other black mage dolls, and they just, like, they teach him the importance of life as opposed to fearing death. And I thought that was really cool. And then you have the main character, you have Zidane, who is this bright and chirpy guy, as opposed to, like, everybody else in Final Fantasy who's so dark and brooding, starting with Terra.
Yeah, he was like the anti-Final Fantasy hero.
Yeah, Terra was brooding, Cloud was brooding, Squall was brooding, and then Zidane and then Tidus in Final Fantasy X, they're all lighthearted. And
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, his jokes are masking what's on the inside.
Yeah, it's definitely Final Fantasy IX is actually why I'm echoing too. Final Fantasy X is a very like it looks more lighthearted than other things, but it's also a very melancholy game because there is just this inherent sadness to the characters. Like, all these characters are essentially, like, alone because they have these inner conflicts that they have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have the princess Garnet, who is, dealing with her mother and having the responsibility of becoming the queen, on her shoulders, and she's not ready for it. It's
And then
just
she
amazing.
finds out, like, who she really is. Like, then you find out she's like one of the last few of this, like, also a trend in Final Fantasy, one of the last of this, like, dying race.
Yeah, well, yeah, she was kidnapped. You find that out later. I didn't know we were gonna get to that kind of spoiler, but yeah, I guess while we're on it,
I mean, if you're gonna watch, why would you watch a Final Fantasy thing if you?
That's true. That's true. But yeah, it turns out that the princess is not the biological child of the queen. That, in fact, the real biological daughter of the queen died. And rather than tell everybody that, they basically kidnapped this baby from a summoner village.
Yeah,
and,
like, pretty twisted.
Yeah.
And then you find out, like, the queen who, like, is supposed to be this, who was, like, presented as the main villain, kind of find out she's a tragic figure too.
She's being manipulated by Kuja,
who is also, like, he's kind of like I think the echoing got worse.
Everybody's being manipulated. Even Kuja is being manipulated by Garland.
Yeah. Like, I would say, like, Kuja's, like, kind of, like, one of the best Final Fantasy villains, because he is, like, he's not as over the top as like a Kefka, but he's equally as manipulative and like just as equally as manipulative as a Kefka is.
Yeah, Kefka is, Kuja is only as over the top as far as he does a lot of play puns.
Yeah,
he does a lot of puns about, like, this is the final act, and, like, he's kind of effeminate. But other than that, like, he's not all that over the top. But
he's much more like low key.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I could talk about Final Fantasy IX forever.
I really could too. I love that game.
That is way high up on my wish list as Final 9 in particular, more so than 6, I would even say. But I tend to bounce around really, so I can't really say that. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 10. But those 3 anyway. But like I mentioned in the last episode, I really want to play them all, but I refuse to emulate them just because.
Well, you don't have to if you have like a PlayStation 4.
But even then, I don't want to do that. It sounds really stupid, I know, but I kind of want to play in in the case of Final 6, I want to play the Super NES version. I might even push for the PS1 version because that was one that I borrowed a while back.
Well, that's on you, man. That's
you can get the. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but it is on the SNES Classic, Final Fantasy VI.
I don't know.
It's the same thing, same controller, same everything. But,
I know. It's just my stupid weird ethos when it comes to games. I just want to play them in the original form. I don't know, but
all right. But speaking of which, something that does not hold up about Final Fantasy IX is it might have been my favorite. It might have been my favorite story, but I played it recently, and the first time that I played it on the portable PSP. And
oh wow!
I could just turn that on and off anytime I wanted to. Put it into sleep mode. I could keep it with me. I could be anywhere, do anything with it. But I noticed ever since I repurchased it on the PC on the PlayStation 4, that the beginning is very slow moving. And it's difficult to kind of get into it, especially since I don't have it on a portable system. I can't just play it from my bed. I have to sit down in front of the television and play it.
So, what do you consider the beginning? Like, what do you consider the beginning of the game?
Do I consider the beginning of the game? I consider the beginning of the game up until the point where they escape from the ice cavern.
Okay. Because, like I was gonna say, I kind of do agree with you in a way because it kind of is very, it is weird because a lot of the party is separated for a lot of the game. Like you kind of, there's this point in the game where you go back and forth between different viewpoints and characters, and you really aren't given full control over the game until about a decent chunk into the game where you have all your party members and you're able to choose who you want in your party and kind of work that way around. It is kind of funnels you somewhat in the beginning stages.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. You guys want to move on to Final Fantasy X?
I would. I mean, I could talk about Final Fantasy IX, but I could talk equally as much about Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, because I feel like we should probably talk about Final Fantasy X for another 5 minutes or so, and then move on to David's quiz. And I think we'll try and work in some of the questions while we talk about this stuff.
We're not going to talk about Final Fantasy 12.
We can,
because I played these Final Fantasy games, so if we can don't have to go a lot about them, but I would appreciate.
Oh,
it.
absolutely. Final Fantasy X. What holds up? What doesn't?
It kind of was a new era for Final Fantasy. It was the first Final Fantasy game to have voice acting in it, which is still even then it wasn't fully voice acting, but I think I see. I think the battle system still holds up great because
absolutely.
It's actually very similar in a way to the Octopath Traveler battle system because you can see who's going to be in what order. You see the turns, and you can kind of use that to your advantage and do speed, get more turns or less turns. Or and you can also the fact that you can change the party members within battle.
Oh, absolutely! That was amazing. And the summons you can treat like a party member too. I really.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that was a lot of fun. People give that game shade because of the voice acting.
It's not terrible, but it's also not great.
It's not, and I feel like people, the scene of Titus laughing.
It's bad.
No, what I'm going to say is that I feel like they're taking it out of context, because the whole
True.
context of that scene is that, I don't know if we're going to spoil this too, but Titus finds out some really tragic news, and he has this whole conversation with Yuna before that laugh about how Yuna wants her journey filled with laughter because, there's going to be so much tragedy in her life. She's being basically sentenced to death. That's like what her society has basically sentenced her to be sacrificed to a giant monster.
I would say that Final Fantasy X is like one of the most tragic Final Fantasy games.
Yeah. And so, like, after that conversation, like, I want this journey filled with laughter because there's going to be so many tears at the end. So I want it filled with laughter. And so Titus gives his best fake laugh, and that's why he sounds like that in that scene. I will defend that scene to the end.
Like, I don't think it's a fault of the actor himself. Like, I think Billy Zane is his actor. I think he did a very good job as Titus. I just think that scene, it's a very awkward scene.
Yeah, I thought the actor who played Titus was James Arnold Taylor.
Oh yeah, is Billy Zane even in this game?
I don't know. I don't remember who Billy Zane is, quite honestly. His name sounds so familiar.
The Phantom.
Billy Zane was Ansem in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, okay.
A game that Titus was also in, so it all comes back together.
It all comes full circle.
He's one of those actors you know his face, but really remember what he's been in.
I loved Final Fantasy X, and that's exactly the reason why I chose not to play Final Fantasy X. Is because I felt like ruining the ending. The ending had this beautiful, bittersweet ending, and it just gets uprooted by Yuna becoming a pop star, basically, instead of who she was in the first game.
That's not. I know I haven't played the game. That's not. Yes, that is part of the game, but that's not really. I wouldn't say it's necessarily correct because she is a treasure hunter in that game, like her, Riku, and Pain. And like, I will take a moment to defend Final Fantasy X too, because it does allow Yuna to have fun and be free, which is something she never got to do in Final Fantasy X. She was always
true.
She had these shackles of this weight of this role that was just crushing her, and then she allowed to let loose. And there were a couple of things too, like it brought back the active time battle system, but a much faster pace version of it, which is very thankful. And the job system too, like you allowed to change costumes, get different jobs.
Yeah.
So it's not. I wouldn't call it nowhere near like what Final Fantasy X was, but it's still. I think it's underrated.
Yeah, I also feel like it's worth mentioning that I think 10 was Hironobu Sakaguchi's last Final Fantasy game. I think it was, and he left, and so I feel like
do you think it was
the quality of the series kind of went down after he left.
Really.
A little bit, mostly because I will give you all the time in the world to talk about 12 because I didn't play it. I haven't played it.
Okay. Yeah, so I haven't played any of the MMO games just because I'm not an MMO player. So I can't really speak to them. But 12, it gets a bad rep. It does. It is the black sheep of the Final Fantasy series because it is so different than any other games.
It looks fun.
It is, and the world of that game in general, the Ivalice, which is what Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story is so different from what was in the Final Fantasy series before. This one is fully voice acted. I think the characters and story is great. It kind of is like, it's this epic political story about like war and then this like empire that's taking over, which is like standard for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I remember last week you saying just like Final Fantasy 2, 12 is kind of just the retelling of Star Wars.
Yeah, and Star Wars is like the archetype of the hero's journey in a way. So it kind of makes sense. That game is, I don't know if you really know about the story. I don't know if you know the behind the scenes of that game. The director of that game kind of just went insane while working it
Really?
because it was like such a undertaking and such a hard game to finish. And he kind of had like a mental breakdown and eventually had to leave.
And they didn't have Saka.
No,
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now, and it was Ito did it. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, I think in a lot of the early, he either designed monsters or he was like he did something for like a lot of previous Final Fantasy games before that.
So yeah, he was the behind the, and like it kind of drove him to the point of breakdown. And that game it got a lot of changes to the game too. The main character, Vaughn, he was not supposed to be even in the game. He was kind of added in. He's like this little street urchin thief, and like he's very and so it's very weird because he doesn't really instigate any of the plot points. Like the plot points happen around him.
Yeah,
so he's more of a witness. I guess you could say
he's kind of like the droids of Star Wars. He's kind
in
of
a way, yeah.
We're supposed to see it through his eyes.
Yeah, it's him and this Pinello who they've grown up together, so they're kind of like this team. But past the story, which I think it's a great story. It's like one of the more epic Final Fantasy stories because like it spans across different regions and countries, and it's all one open world in a way, essentially. And so like there's no like all the battles take place on the map, and so I did so going on to the main complaints of this game that you can play it. Essentially, you don't need to actually play it. Do you know about like the battle system of 12?
12? Yeah, I start out with like simplistic commands that you can give the rest of your party, and then as you level up, you can get more complex things. Like when this happens, party members do this. When this happens, party members do that.
You can actually buy those commands too, which is really weird. But yeah, so you just say, for example, like if a party member is at 50% health, this character will use Cure on them, and then like you'll attack. Like so, you can pretty much set commands so you don't have to actually engage with anything.
Well, that's interesting.
But I will say it's kind of like a single player MMO in a way, and it actually is more strategic than people get it credit for, because you have to think of certain commands and certain conditions that will benefit you in battle. And I never played the original PS2 version, so I only played the remaster on PS4. And what that game does, because what I noticed is that the maps of that game are very big and expansive, and what the PS4 done, it gives a fast forward feature. So another one, so you can either fast forward at double or quadruple speed, and you just tap a button, and so you just like the entire game is sped up by like 2 times or 4 times. So you can just like walk through a field and like go to an enemy and start using your gambits and like get done with it and then move on to the next one. So it makes grinding a lot less of a chore than it has been in previous games. And it's really like unique. It's really something that hasn't been done in a Final Fantasy game. It was a turn from like what Final Fantasy was at that point. Like there were no such thing as turn-based battle. Like there were like a command menu, but it was just so different from what came before it, and I just feel like it gets a bad rep from a lot of people.
Yeah. It's definitely one that I want to try, especially since it got re-released on PS4, the Zodiac Age.
Yes. Can I just go back? Can I go back to it again? Can I just talk? I completely forgot. Speaking of Zodiac, you remind me of the license board system is so good, because in a way similar to, because I mean also we never talked about the sphere grid in 10, which I thought was fantastic, because
it was fantastic.
It did give each character their own specific roles, but it also let you expand upon those roles and dip into other job classes.
Yeah, and in 12, one of the biggest complaints with the license board was that every character felt the same. But in the Zodiac Age with the re-release, and with, of course, the release of the international version, I think it was, with 12, you had more specific zodiac
Yeah.
boards.
So like how it works is like you pick each character you can like there's like a different number of classes and you can pick one for each character and like that's their class. Like you can't from that point on like no other character can be that class, and then
Yeah.
each that class has its own specific license board that has different skills and everything. But so and then later on in the game you can unlock a second class because there's 12 in total, so two for each party member.
Yeah.
And so each character can have 2 abilities and 2 license boards, and so it does give a degree of creativity. But like obviously some characters work better as other characters. Like some jobs work better for other characters depending on like what weapons and stats they already have. But it does like I don't agree. Like I said, yeah, you don't need. You can just set the game and like have gambits and go, but it does take a lot more direct control than I think people give it credit for. So, I do applaud Square for supporting this game so much after it's been released. Like I said, I mean they even like went in the actual game itself and tweaked it because I know they're like I can't was it chapter 13? I remember like that was like no I can't remember now that people like I will say Final Fantasy 15 is like kind of a broken game in a way. It's like a giant mess, but also a fascinating like mess in a way that I was deeply infected by it, and like I liked all the characters. I liked the 4 bros just going on their road trip together.
That was great. Yeah.
Like I said, it's a flawed game for sure. Like there are like many definite flaws to it, but it's a special game too for me. I think it's a special game.
I really liked the road trip aspect of it that you just mentioned, but it doesn't hold as much for me if I don't like the characters.
But yes, I mean that because like you can't have a good story if you don't have good characters. So
I mean, like, you have your archetypes. You have Ignis, who is like the butler, and he's all stiff, you know. But and you have like the jokester, who's what's his name again? I don't even remember. But
God, I'm trying to remember. I know Noctis, like obviously Noctis, but trying to remember the other ones. And Ignis.
He's basically the Zell of the group, and I didn't like Zell when Zell was Zell from Final Fantasy VIII.
Okay, so maybe is it like just that specific character archetype you don't like instead of the character itself?
Well, I mean, if they did something unique with him, then I would like him more. But
okay.
he doesn't. None of the characters really seem to be growing. You know.
Zell was a clown, but he had a heart of gold. He's a clown with a heart of gold, but he was annoying. I didn't particularly like him either.
Yeah. Oh, you have Ignis. Prompto, right?
Prompto, yeah. I'm trying
yeah.
I just
and
blanked.
then Gladiolus.
Yes, Gladiolus, and then everyone's favorite Noctis.
Yeah.
Who I will say I'm like betting that he's gonna be in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, of course. You know, he's already in like Tekken 7, I think.
Yeah, they've done some really weird crossovers with Final Fantasy 15. Like they had like Assassin's Creed crossover with Final Fantasy 15, and he's in Tekken. So
really,
yeah.
In what way?
I can't remember exactly. I think it was in Final Fantasy 15. There was now I'm like blanking on it. Hold on. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they did the Assassin's Festival. It was just like this Assassin's Creed like inspired festival in Final Fantasy 15. And like this Final Fantasy and like in Assassin's Creed inspired stuff.
Oh, okay. I don't actually don't. I don't know. If I can be honest with you guys, I don't really have much to say about 15. I like the battle system. I don't really like the characters or the side stories. But
That's fair. Everyone likes what they like and does.
But what I do like, and I don't. be dismissive. So like I will say what I did like about it. I really liked the direction that they went with classic monsters. I thought that was really neat. I thought like, for example, you have the Naga or whatever, who's like a snake lady. Like I went down into a sewer. Down into a sewer and fought her, and just like a lot of returning monsters show up and with PS4 graphics.
Wasn't there that
really cool.
giant? It's a turtle, but
and
it's
the giant summons.
Is that what that is? Because I was wondering about that because I recognize the enemy. And 5, I think. Adamantoid. I think it's called.
Adamantoids, yeah.
Was it that? Yeah. And it appeared as some sort of giant monster, and I was wondering whether it was a summon or whether they
it's a monster fight.
It's a boss kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
just like in Final Fantasy 13, the summons hold like a story reason for existing.
Yeah, and 12, like Final Fantasy 10, I mean.
Oh yeah.
I forgot to mention that. Like I like that. Like the summons are important to the story.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about 15?
No. Like I said, I'm like can't believe it's like actually came out. Like it was a long time coming when it actually finally did come out. So no, I'm just like honestly, I don't know if it wasn't. I know it wasn't. I don't think it really was in the plans, but I just want to like what do you before like we get to like the other part, what do you want out of potential the Final Fantasy series in general, or like a Final Fantasy 16? Like what would you want to see out of that?
That's a good question. What I want out of Final Fantasy, you know what? I want the gameplay to come first, and I feel like
Really?
15 did that. But a close second has to be I care about the freaking characters.
Yeah.
I want to cry if one of them dies. I want to feel their pain. I sound like a brat, you know?
No, I mean it's fair. Like I said, at the end of the day,
I want an Oompa Loompa.
If like you don't connect with the characters, then the story just falls flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just like that's the main problem for me with Final Fantasy 15, because I don't have to do the side stories. I mean, like, who cares if it kind of feels kind of samey? But if I just don't want the boys to reach the end of their road trip, then what else is there?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that those DLC backstories for all of them. I know that they go through something, and there's a point in the story where they all like separate. And then you only get to play through each individual person's solo adventure through DLC. I want that as part of the story. That is
like party dispersal when like a party gets separated and things
Yeah.
like that. That's quite a staple of the series, I think. One character goes missing, or even sometimes one character is on their own, gets separated from the party and stuff. So
yeah, well, imagine Final Fantasy VI. Imagine like when everybody gets separated. Imagine having to buy each individual person that you go and find again. That's what it feels like.
Like a ransom.
Yeah. Because I know you haven't played 6, David, but there's a point near the middle of the game where you get separated from everybody. It's not. I'm not gonna spoil why, but there's a point in the middle of the game where you get separated from
Now I know
from the rest of your party, and you have to go around and collect all of them again. But I'm just saying that, like, Final Fantasy 15, it feels like having to pay for each one that you find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get you.
So, what about you, David? What would you want? I mean, I know you're not like you are more of a retro player, like you said, but what would you want to see out of a potential Final Fantasy 16?
No fast forward buttons.
Yeah, that wasn't going to be my place, actually. Yeah, no. I think I just want one of my favorite things about Final Fantasy in general. A game is just lovable characters, or just likable characters I will remember. So I'm going to go the other way and say I don't want characters that are just forgettable. And also, I'm going to copy what Mike said about like designing the battle system first, because that's kind of the direction they went with 2 versus 1, isn't it? They kind of designed the battle system and then designed the story around it, or was it vice versa? No, they did the story first, actually. I can't remember. But either way, for me, I think, the number one thing is I just want to interesting characters, and I think through your interesting characters, you will have a good story. I think it's almost unavoidable to. I think if you have a good story, you have good characters. If you have good characters, you'll likely have a good story.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to answer that question because obviously I kind of left off from 8, and I've not seen the series develop. So everything I could be talking about could have been done 3 times over. But that would be like the focus that I would like to see, like story and characters.
Yeah, that's the thing though, with like each game essentially being a reset of the other. Like story and characters are completely go back to ground zero, so it can be like a completely different each game.
Yeah,
that's why I hate it when people say, "Why is it called Why is it called Final Fantasy?" It's like, well, for these characters, it kind of almost is, because it's always some world-ending thing. So for them, it is the end of their story in a way.
Yeah,
So,
and like that just goes back to the point. Like it was the original one was originally like Square thought it was going to be their last game, so it will be like Final Fantasy.
Apparently, that's not true.
I
don't know. Well, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago now that Sakaguchi was on stage and he was asked that question. Surprisingly, because you think he would have been asked that a long time ago, but someone like sort of stood up and asked this question and said, "Why was it called Final Fantasy?" And his answer, if I recall, was that from the very beginning they wanted titles with alliteration, and apparently this is very popular in Japan, or at least this is desired. So they were going to go with an FF or something that went with fantasy.
Fighting fantasy.
Yeah, and then there was like Fighting Fantasy, but that was like a book series or a choose your own adventure kind of series. But that was solely it. Apparently, that Sakaguchi just chose a word that went fitted with with fantasy. But then again, I also want to say the reason why the first called Final. But I think
the first one was called Final Fantasy because it was Square's last hope, and if it didn't do well, then they were going to go bankrupt.
Yeah, that is what the general belief is, but apparently Sakaguchi says otherwise. But also, if Sakaguchi agreed with that story, he's basically admitting that his company that he worked for was failing.
Well, Square was failing.
They were.
But that could be his way of dodging that and saying like, no, our company wasn't failing. What are you talking about? We've always been great. Look, with 17 games in, so it could be that story could be partly the truth, but the reason why they went with Final is because they probably thought it was going to be the last game. So both stories could be true. So I don't know. Only Sakaguchi and Ko really know the true story, but I would think that it's probably the former. That
Absolutely.
They were circling the drain.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're at almost 2 hours. Do you think that maybe we should go on to the quiz or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. So, guys, here are the rules. I got 16, and some of them have multiple choice, some don't. 10 points for a correct answer. 5 points if you take multiple choice, if it is an option, of course. And of course, if you don't get the answer correct, I'll pass it on to your opponent, who can steal the points from you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to flip a coin here to decide who I start with. All right, cool. I'm going to start with you, Aidan.
Okay.
So start. Okay. Tell me. Give me a number between 1 and 16.
10.
10. Okie dokie. Here we go then. So for 10 points, I like this question. Who created the Genova project?
Oh God.
10 points for a correct answer, but if you want multiple choice, you have 5.
I know the name. Oh God. Okay, I can't. The name is escaping me.
I am going to do significantly worse on this quiz as opposed to the Metal Gear Solid quiz.
You don't know that. We don't know that. Have you got an answer there, Aidan?
I can't. I can't think of. I know the character. but I can't.
Is it
Whoa,
Hojo?
No. You can't butt in, man. Aiden's got to choose it whether he wants to go multiple choice.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, I have to choose an answer. I can't pass.
Well, I was going to give you multiple choice, and you can have.
Oh, multiple choice. Okay.
Yeah. So
I
this is
forgot
for
about that. I'm sorry.
5 points. No worries. Okay, is it A, Dr. Hollander, B, Professor Hojo, C, Professor Gast, or D, Lucretia Crescent?
Well, I'm gonna say Professor Hojo.
It's not. No, it's Professor Gast.
Oh, I
It's
forgot about that guy.
Gast Faramis. He created the project, but Hojo took over. There
Oh.
was two parts of it, and Gast,
Okay. I wouldn't
Gast
have gotten that.
left the project because he thought that Genova was. Actually, I'm not going to carry on because that will ruin another question. All right, so no one gets points for that one then. Going well. All right, Mike, choose a number between 1 and 16 that's not 10.
9.
9, okie dokie. What is Kefka's full name? No multiple choice. Just straight up.
Is his last name Palazzo or something?
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. It's Palazzo, yeah.
Palazzo or Palazzo or something?
Yeah, you got it. Kefka Palazzo. All right, Aidan. Choose a number between 1 and 10. 1 and 16, that's not 9 or 10.
I'll do 2.
Number 2. All right, your question is... All right, Final Fantasy 1 sees the first appearance of a recurring group of enemies known as the Four Fiends. Can you name all 4 of them?
Oh!
I just want to say it's 5 points per correct answer.
Oh God, I know them too. Okay. Like I know,
So-
I know who they are. Like I mean, it's here.
Yeah. So you can answer as many as you can, but as soon as you get one wrong, I'll pass it over to Aidan, to Mike, who can then try and steal. So
Yeah.
go for it. Go for it.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. Like, it's.
I'm such a nerd.
Cause like I know it's like the element, Okay. Whoa. One is the Isn't it the lick or lich?
Yeah,
Or
there's
whatever.
one Lich, 5 points. Lich, yeah.
Isn't he Skeleton Man?
Yeah,
He's
he's
a
Earth.
death or
He's
something, isn't he?
Earth
And
element.
then there's one for each element. And then the Kraken, right?
Yeah. Another 5 points. That's you
Okay.
tied with Mike now.
There's like, oh God, I know there's like that weird dragon guy and like snake lady, and
Yeah.
I don't know their names, so I'll give it to Mike.
Well. All right, Mike, what are the other 2?
The fire lady is also known as Carrie in the original Final Fantasy because of space limitations for the names.
Oh, okay. I got a different name yet.
Marilyn.
Was that
Oh,
his name?
oh,
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's
fine.
it.
I got
That's
Mike
it.
as well, yeah. And the other one?
And the dragon, I actually believe, like in the original fable that she's from, I think it's a female.
I think so too.
But I don't know. Oh, I had it in my. Okay. We got Lich, we got Marilith, we got Kraken, and we got Tiamat.
Yeah, there we go.
go.
That's Mike up to 20 and Aidan, you're on 10.
It was like some sort of like really like dumb fable about like an archer phallically shooting his arrow, his silver arrow to Tiamat, who is supposed to be like a woman or something like that.
Naturally, yeah. No, Tiamat is she is a female.
So it's your turn then, Mike. Choose a number between 16, not 2.
1.
Number 1. All right. This is quite an easy one, I reckon. There are 6 character classes in the very first. Can you name 4 of them? 5 points for each.
I think I named all 6 of.
Wait, what was the question? I didn't catch the question.
Oh, there are 6 character classes in the very first Final Fantasy. Can you name
Oh
4?
my God, that one is so. I would have gotten that one.
Okay, we got fighter /
Yep.
warrior. We got black belt / monk. We got black mage, white mage, and red mage, and thief.
Yeah, okay, I'll just give you the 20 then. I know you wanted 30, but no. So that puts you up to points. Right, Aidan.
Oh
Choosing
boy.
between 1 and 16.
I'll do 5.
3 and 16, I guess, right?
I'll do 5.
Okay. All right, I reckon you get this one. Which Final Fantasy game introduced the ability to summon?
Okay. Isn't
Multiple choice available.
what?
Multiple choice available.
Okay. Obviously it's not 1. Was it was it 3?
Yeah, good job.
Yes,
Okay,
it
because I was
was.
gonna say like the job class system and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, in 3 you actually like encounter these summons and you fight them first.
Oh,
Yeah.
guys, I
You
forgot
fight
about
the
the
soundboard.
soundboard.
That's like how like I remembered I was like I associated with like it was this, but I associated that whole thing with like the job class system in the game.
Odin
like,
was
obvious-
such a pain in the butt. Odin.
Obviously it wasn't 4, but even though I was at first I was gonna say like 4, I was like wait no, because there's like because 4 because like there's no job classes in 4, and then I was like
You take the logical approach, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 4, yeah. Mike, I remembered I just. Yeah, choose number between 3 and 16.
How about from now on pick the numbers, because honestly I don't remember which ones haven't been picked.
All right, I'll
already.
choose a random. Yeah.
Yeah.
Choose a random.
That's fine.
Okey-doke. All right. So Mike,
Pardon me?
which of the it is your turn, right?
Yes.
Which of the following is the odd one out? Kane, Teller, Galuf, and Edge. I'm looking for a specific answer here, of course.
Say that again.
Which of the following is the odd one out? I'm looking for a specific answer. Kane, Teller, Galuf, and Edge.
Galuf.
I was like I know this.
Yeah, it's Galuf. Simply put, all the other characters from.
When you said Kane, I was listening for like Dragoon.
That is 10 points to you. The Mike says 50 points to 20, you guys.
Woo.
Aidan, you got some catching up to do. All right, here we go. Random question. Aerith is said to be the last remaining member of which ancient race of powerful magical beings?
But now that like we literally was just talking about it, and now that we're admitting it, it's like it literally just slipped my head. Okay. Isn't
No
it
multiple
the?
choice, sadly.
I don't know. It's like no, 'cause I'm thinking of something, but that's not it. Why am I the worst? Like I know this one. It's
You're on the spot.
Isn't it? Okay, no, I know it because it reminded me of this mattress company. Isn't it like Serta or Serta or Cetra?
Say that again.
Cetra, Serta, is
Yeah,
it?
there we
Yes,
go. You
Serta,
got it.
Cetra,
You got
yeah,
it, Cetra.
yeah.
All right, that's 50 points to 30. All right, Mike.
Yes.
At the beginning of Final Fantasy V, the winds begin to slow. Fearing evil is afoot, the king of which city rushes off to check the state of the wind crystal? This is a hard one, I think.
I don't remember.
It's because it's it's quite a vague question if you ask me, but I had to throw in a hard one.
It's
Multiple choice available.
it's Lena's father. Lena's father.
It's Rydia's father, isn't it? Oh wait,
Rydia's from 4.
oh I got my car. Yeah, but yes, so yeah, it's father of
I
one
don't
of the.
remember. I pass to Aidan.
No, you got multiple choice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna know it.
All right, so is it A, Tycoon, B, Baron, C, Mist, D, Mysidia?
It's Tycoon.
It's Tycoon. It's 5 points to you, good sir.
See, the multiple choices help everything.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. I'll do away with that next time then. All right, Aidan. What is Red 13's real name?
Ooh.
Oh my god, what is
If
the
it-
name?
Red 13, by the way, is my favorite character of all the entire
I
series.
don't remember
Yeah,
either.
Red 13 is a good boy. Is a very good boy.
He's a good boy.
Um,
He's a good dog.
I don't know.
Oh man.
All right, then I'll pass it over to
either.
Mike. Mike, you want a shot?
It begins with an N, and I know that anything I say is gonna probably sound racist, like Nagasaki or something. I don't know.
Oh my
no,
god.
it is not
I
the
don't-
Japan town that was flattened by an A-bomb in the...
I don't remember. Like
no. All right, pass on this one, yeah? It's Nanaki.
Nanaki.
You were close.
You were close, but not close enough. All right, Aidan.
Yes.
What is the name of the playable card game in Final Fantasy VIII?
Ooh.
God, I know this.
I keep forgetting I got a soundboard here. I should be using this.
Dude,
I'm just gonna, like, this game is just making me
Oh,
sound
the
like
music is so infectious.
this quiz is making me sound like uninformed and like I just don't know what I'm talking
Because you're in
about.
depression. It's 'cause you're in depression.
Yeah, is there multiple
You
choice
got
for this
five.
one?
No.
I don't know it.
Hey, Mikey, want to take over?
Yeah. The one for 8 is Triple Triad.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like I don't do card game. I don't do any of the Final Fantasy
Actually, I
games.
spent so much time on Triple Triad. It was unreal. Like one day, I spent the entire day playing it.
So like I
especially-
don't remember anything of it.
Especially the one time when I lost my Ifrit card, I tried to get it back.
Oh,
And I kept
no.
using other cards, and I just got stuck. I got stuck in a well, and I thought to myself, "Oh, I'm losing all my cards trying to get
You
one
just
back."
gotta save before you play, man.
That's what I was doing. That's what I was late. That's what I was doing later on. Aidan.
Yeah.
Age of 2, right? Oh, wait, is it?
No. I just got the.
Oh,
No,
you
yeah,
passed.
that was my
Right,
question.
so yeah, it's right, so 65 to 30. You're back. Right, Mike.
Yes.
What is the name of the military air force captained by the Dark Knight Cecil at the beginning of Final Fantasy IV? Multiple choice available. I think Aidan knows this anyway.
Red. Multiple choice, please.
Uh,
The red.
for 5 points then, is it A, Black Wings, B, Silver Wings, C, Red Wings,
Red
D, White
wings. Red wings. Sorry.
Hey, sound effect. There we go. You did hear that, right?
Yes.
Alright. He's running ahead with it now, Aidan.
Yeah.
Right, Aidan. Which
Yeah.
Final Fantasy game is set in the world of Spira or Spira? I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Oh, that is oh my god, that it's Final Fantasy 7, right? No.
No.
Wait, no. No, it's Final Fantasy 10.
Wait, what do you reckon, Mike? Should I give that to him?
Give it to him.
I don't know why I thought of that. I was like, wait, no, why did I say 7? I like knew it when I said it.
Alright, Mike, I've got a 3-answer question for you. Yeah. So 5 points for each. Gardens, educational institutions seen in Final Fantasy VIII, of which there are 3. Can you name them all?
Balam Garden is the only one I really remember.
Okay.
Was Galbadia one?
Yeah. One more. That's 10 points so far.
I don't remember the third one. I pass.
Aidan, over to you. Do you know the third one? For 5 points?
Can you repeat it? Wait,
Okay.
can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so educational institutions seen in Final Fantasy VIII, otherwise known as gardens, of which there are 3. Can you name all of them? Now, Mike has already mentioned Balan Garden and Galbadia Garden, but there's one more.
No, like I said, 8 is one that like kind of I just didn't really play. I didn't really play much of 8, so I don't really know that one.
You spend most of your time in 2 of the gardens, really, anyway, I think, isn't it? So the third garden.
Pardon?
Trabia. Or Trabia.
Third. It's what?
Trabia, or Trabia, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Oh, okay.
Trabia. Whose turn is it?
How many more questions?
It's my turn.
Only a handful. Alright, Aidan, what is the full name of Final Fantasy IX's Princess Garnet?
Isn't it like? Oh god, it's like Garnet Alexandra
Alexandria something. No.
No.
Alexandria is like a kingdom.
Hmm?
I don't remember either. It's like
It's a long.
It's a ridiculous name. It's gone till Alexandros the 17th.
Oh, so I was close.
You were far.
There's no way either one of us could have got.
I had
And 9
Alexandria.
is my favorite. 9 is my favorite.
Right. I have 2 more questions, and Aidan, I gotta say.
Oh no, I'm doing horribly.
Mike, it's your turn, isn't it? It is
Okay.
Which of the following Final Fantasy games is it? I don't know. I keep losing track, so you keep passing it back and forth. I think it's yours, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Which of the following Final Fantasy games featured a soundtrack not composed by the legendary composer Nobuo Uematsu? Final Fantasy 3, Fantasy 13.
Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, correct. Oops, correct noise. Hey! No, that was composed by Masashi, who co-composed the soundtrack for Final Fantasy X with Uematsu and Junior Nakano.
I think
Like,
Uematsu left after 11. But I'm not sure.
He left because he was signed on to compose for 14. He was going to compose it, but he basically relinquished it to do for this for 14. All right, Aidan.
Mm-hmm.
This is just for face now, man. You're like 50 points behind. So,
Yeah, it's fine. Okay.
Redemption.
which game in the Final Fantasy series introduced everyone's favorite big yellow bird, the Chocobo?
Oh, it was Final Fantasy 2, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's Final Fantasy 2 is when it introduced like all the landmark features.
Right, we're gonna get an audience clap now. There we go.
Yay.
Oh, I was gonna have the Final Fantasy fanfare as well.
I can play it.
There we go. Not the whole thing, of course.
Is that all the questions?
That is all the questions. Mike wins with a comfortable victory of 90 points to 60.
All right.
That's not that bad.
Well, it's not. No, you pulled it back a little bit there. I think.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. So guys, where can everybody reach you? Where can everybody reach you, David?
The best place to reach me, I'm pretty much helming the retro pod Instagram these days, and that is Retro Podcast, or rather at Retro Podcast. You can also get me on Twitter at DavyShiro, DavyShiro, or join the Discord. It's probably the best way to get in touch with me, or any of us, really.
All right, and Aidan, how can people reach you?
Hello. I am on the Twitter at Aidan Simons. You can find me there. I have a YouTube channel. Also, just type in Aidan Simons. I ramble there, and that's really it. You can find all my stuff from my Twitter. So just do that. That's like a all-in-one thing.
Awesome.
Super.
And you guys can find me at on Twitter at GameOld, and you can find me on YouTube at GameOld. And you can always find me on cultureofgaming.com with the rest of our lovely panel. And until then, guys, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.